really a pleasure to be here speaking in the early morning. Uh, Whoever haven't heard of Snaptrude, so the way we design it, it's a modern, collaborative 3D BIM tool on the cloud built from the ground up. So in this talk, I would spend a lot of the time in explaining my perspective because I'm not an architect, and I come from a very different background of my observations of working within the industry as an outsider and what those conclusions were and like why are we even building Snaptrude from that perspective. Uh, so just to give you my background to begin with, I'm a geometry researcher. I come from math, geometry, applied to computer graphics kind of background, was very much like in an academic focus. We built like the foundations of photogrammetry, applying photogrammetry to do a lot more things way back in 2011, 12, 13. And because of that, I was involved in a large-scale project, national level, where we were reconstructing a World Heritage Site, a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 3D from ground up. And how do you automate that creation so you could replicate it across multiple sites? And since it was an ambitious project, architects were involved. And that's when I very closely worked with them for a few years. And my first perception was most of the design software stack, so to say, was built in the 80s and the 90s. And the core foundations have been still stuck and have those reminiscence of those 80s and 90s thought process. And that leads to a creation of a lot of silos, and nothing much is done to fix it. I saw that there's an opportunity to solve some problems for these people that I'm working very closely with, and I started building plugins. And as I started showing these around to people within my network, as I started building that network, everybody started asking, oh, can you also do this? Or can you also like automate this scheduling? Or can you also do this? And like, I just went into this entire 2.5 years of building point solutions is what I call at the end of the day. They were as sophisticated as like how do you solve electrical routing once the design is ready on a browser and sync it back to Revit. So you could take takeoffs, etc. So, but I always kept asking one fundamental thing is like, can you automate this design? Because like we were applying machine learning was just beginning. This was 2014, 15, 15, 16 timeline. Can you apply machine learning or like some generative approach to be able to solve design? And this is how I thought actually buildings are designed, which is like, is it a multivariate equation? And you can just apply a maybe a linear algorithm or like put it into a neural network and it'll start spitting out the right design. But as I spent more and more time into deeper workflows, starting with bigger firms, I realized it is not about like climbing one mountain, so to say. Like get to the best solution. There's like never one best solution when you're designing things. It's more like some people are trying to climb, some people are trying to relax on a beach. So there are like multiple different approaches because design is the perfect mixture of logic. You have to satisfy zoning regulations, everything, while also taking into account the aesthetics, the art, the ergonomics, the anthropology, and so many other factors which very few people, not within the industry, appreciate enough. A lot of people, when I come and talk to people within the tech and the VC industry, they try equating construction to automobile or manufacturing. But I think we don't give enough credit that construction and design is very, very unique in itself. And we cannot take whatever has worked in automobile, manufacturing, etc., and just like paste it. And I think that's kind of happened, like to an extent, not entirely. And like with this, I said like let's look at more of what is the actual problem if people are not looking to create a magic button to be able to design things. I think it's more about how do you execute these design ideas, iterate quickly on those design ideas, and deliver those ideas very quickly. But the stack is very, very sophisticated. This is nowhere comprehensive as to how wide and deep the design software stack looks like. There's different project management tools, there are different design tools, there are different documentation tools. But one thing to look at it, it's a very non-linear process. Every time you go from your concept to schematic, there is a huge period where it's neither concept nor schematic. It's both, and it's none sometimes. And you keep iterating, and when those two tools are actually different, the pain is so much that you would rather not do iterations and just stick with whatever you have. So you have to compromise. And like a lot of people do compromise in that sense. Tools are disconnected in that sense, and also people are disconnected. Like there's so many parties, it's not just like one individual person taking all the decisions. And with these realizations, I said, like, if I could equate this entire design software stack to an old plumbing system, whatever point solutions which I was building or which I was asked to being built are more like band-aids. And of course, those band-aids help. They give immediate relief. But it's inevitable that we would have to rebuild that old plumbing system because it's not sustainable for the next 10, 15 years. And it was not just because it's an old plumbing system, but I'll tell you, in the last 2 decades, the world has changed. Most of these tools were built with the foundations of the 80s and the 90s, but in the last 2 decades, internet has really transformed everyone's lives. We have started seeing how cloud has penetrated every other industry, but hasn't really impacted our industry that much. And also, like, because of the connectedness, because of internet, we all have got a collection of knowledge, like a tribal knowledge as an industry has really, really grown. Everybody shares stuff with each other, and all of this knowledge and the ability to use a tech, we see it in every other part of our life except when we actually execute things. And with that perspective, I said, like, it would have to be rebuilt, and this was my conclusion way back in mid to late 2017. And this was still a hypothesis for me, that we would have to rebuild a new design tool from the ground up, which would be on the cloud, which would be on the browser. And we were fortunate enough to get some VC backing at that point of time. We raised a small amount of money. And we kind of underestimated how hard it is to build it. And super glad that we underestimated, otherwise we wouldn't have started. So we thought maybe in 2-3 years we'll have a usable version of a product. It's been over 5 years, and I think now we can say that the foundations are there, it's usable enough. And during this journey, we got validation. It was not just us who are hypothesizing that this is a problem, but I think the industry articulated it really well when they came out with these open letters, and there's so many forums in which this is being discussed, that nobody's doing much about attempting to solve these problems. And it's the same thing, interoperability is broken. We still struggle with backward compatibility with the same tool, which we shouldn't have to, I think, in 2020s. And collaboration is very, very fundamentally broken. And also on top of that, like, AEC is one of the most collaborative industries. Like, it's not an individual isolated workflow. And we would thought, if you have to start, how do we start with, like, connecting these people, connecting the tools, and connecting the data which it generates, with which these were the foundations, like connect the people, so it's a collaborative design tool, connecting the data, so it's all, the feedback loops are much shorter. If you're taking a design decision, because every design decision that you take is invaluable because it has an impact on some factor, be it on the sustainability factors of the building, be it on the zoning laws, be it on costing, be it on some area schedule. And the data should always follow the form or the design intent. And how do you connect these tools so you're not going back and forth and just like figuring out how to make this work rather than figuring out, let's take the right and the best design decision. And the idea is nobody's trying to climb one mountain. There are various mountains, there are various beaches. Everybody wants to get to their most optimum solution. Let us allow them to be there and get there as quickly as possible without having to worry about the processes. And we took the harder approach of building the foundations first. So we started with building out literally a new geometry kernel, which is browser first. And this was the most painful part of building in the last 5 years. It supports various types of fundamental geometric representations and manipulation of the geometry. We had to build a new database which could actually enable real-time collaboration across hundreds and hundreds of users simultaneously using one instance of the project, and the data emits and gets captured in real time, and all distributed systems. And interoperability was I think, one of the really big challenges, to be able to understand what does the existing data schema looks like, and how do you create a universal structure which can not just talk to a single isolated tool, but to almost every other tool out there. So we had to build these. We're trying to see how much of it we can make it public and open, so people can build on top of it, people can use the APIs, etc. But the idea is by end of the year, we should have a solid API structure that we could actually release for everyone to use Snaptrude's geometry kernel, to be able to use our database structure, and build whatever you would want to on top of it without having to worry about interoperability or disconnectedness, or just not having to be on the modern stack. And just so that I could give you a quick preview, we are doing a new release as early as late next week. This is a culmination of all the feedback that we've been getting since early this year when we kind of came out of beta in some form. We called it as a V1 release. Now this is supposed to be a sketch to BIM V2 release for us. I can give you a quick preview of what it looks like, but the idea is expand the design freedom and just bring a lot more depth to the product, whose foundations we have laid so far. As you saw, that was a very quick preview. It's releasing next week, and we are very excited. And at the end of the day, as I said, if we build a tool in isolation, it really doesn't work, because again, we are creating a point solution in this extremely wide universe of AECtech ecosystem. So connectedness is one of the most important philosophies for us, and we have tried connecting Snaptrude with existing tools, especially Revit. And with this new release which we are coming out, we establish a much more deeply integrated workflow with Revit, not just exporting to it, but also importing from it. And we are adding layers on top of it. So as we are reading data out of your Revit files which you are importing, you can actually start seeing the different types of wall assemblies, slab assemblies, different type of Revit families that you have been using across your life cycle. And our idea is, can we help you reuse all of this content a lot better? In what form, shape, that's something which we've been asking a lot of the people who are working with us. It could be based on just deriving some insights. It could be helping you start your next project in a much more automated fashion, because we have a system which converts literally any sketching mode into a BIM model. And it could be machine learning driven, it could be rules driven, and that's something which we've been trying to work very, very closely with the firms we talk to. But the foundations are there, so here's where we are. We are just looking to partner with as many firms as we can with our capacity. The team has expanded. Fortunate to say that we have raised another 2 rounds of investment. A public release will come out next week about it. So we have all the bandwidth and the capacity to really build something which can last for a really long time in this industry, for maybe the next decade to come. So this is about us and me, and really glad, again, for this opportunity to speak here. Thank you so much.